match. Colegrove did win the flip. Shocks for Blood Crypt to 18, leads on Citrus Supplier.
Being on the play is a pretty big deal because that means Chalice the Void is not going to be nearly as problematic. And here we're just going to see if the Hogak deck can get the Hogak online here on turn 2. Citrus Supplier is a great start.
Yeah, the GAC was flipped to the Supplier, just an Eldrazi Temple for hand. Colegrove will start his second turn with a Faithless Looting. I see a Citrus Supplier left over in the hand after that. Discards a Bloodghast.
He also has another fetch land and a Bloodghast.
And a Dismember from hand on the Citrus Supplier in response to the Bloodghast coming off of this fetch land. Another Hogak going to the graveyard, as well as 2 others.
Yeah, but he does have that Citrus Supplier, so he's going to fetch again. He's going to play a second black creature, mill 3 more cards, and then he's going to play the Hogak from the grave.
So fetch shock here, down to 15. An abundance of cards in the graveyard to delve the GAC. Citrus Supplier is going to add to that as well.
Yeah, but nothing really else going on. He does have a Citrus Supplier, a Bloodghast, and a Hogak on turn 2. You know.
It didn't mill any Vengevine, so it's only 11 power on turn 2.
Only 11 power. Here comes a Matterus Shaper to play defense.
All right, now this game is pretty close.
Yeah, we got a blocker.
Yeah, Tron deck's doing its thing. The Gax deck doing its thing. Just 2 decks doing their thing.
Oh, my God. Oh, man. Okay, here comes a Claim to Fame. The front half returns a creature to the battlefield. The back half can give something haste. Maybe like a Hogak later on.
So it was a Citrus Supplier brought back.
Nothing really found, though, if I'm not mistaken. So no.
There was a Golgari Thug, but not of huge consequence. Colegrove casts a Carrion Feeder, sacrifices that Supplier. Some more junk to the bin. Sacrifices the other Supplier. No real hits there, so Bloodghast and Hogak will attack.
This is a breath of fresh air compared to the normal 4 Vengevines we see on turn 3.
Reshaper jumps in front of Bloodghast. Hand will pick up a Reality Smasher, but he'll get smashed down to 8 by the GAC and pick him up.
Are we done? We're done. Yay, we're done.
Keeping up our clip of Game 1s being around 4 minutes this weekend. Brisk 3.5 for this matchup.
I don't even know what to say at this point. I'm just tired. Now, at the Mythic Championship, it was a completely different story because there are 6 rounds of draft in the middle of the tournament. And, you know, on occasion, decks that aren't necessarily the best deck in the format end up making it into the top 8 because of a really strong 5-1 or 6-0 performance in Limited and a pretty good showing in the constructed format. We had Hardened Scales Affinity in the top 8, a deck that we thought was mostly dead, or I thought was mostly dead. We also, what else did we have? There was like multiple copies of Jund.
Yep. Mono Green Tron, Eldrazi Tron, Jund, 1 Hogak, Hardened Scales.
Yeah. No Izzet Phoenix, surprisingly, and I haven't really seen Izzet Phoenix deck in day 2, honestly. I think there were only like 4.
Izzet Phoenix is a deck that gets hit by a lot of this graveyard hate. In general, is a bit slower than the GAC. Awkward metagame spot for that deck, I think.
Yeah, oftentimes when you play a deck that does like half measures, you're kind of preying on people's lack of wanting to play a lot of, like graveyard hate or creature removal. And the Izzet Phoenix deck is usually either pretty good at getting back Phoenix in the face of spot removal and pretty good at flipping Thing in the Ice against graveyard hate. And here, though, I guess there was a huge combination of both things and really stifled them early in the day yesterday, and only 4 made it into day 2 today.
Eldrazi Tron also a pretty popular deck right now in the Hogak metagame,
yeah.
And those Chalice of the Voids, they're a beating for Phoenix.
They do a number, but here we see Leyline of the Void starting off for Dylan Hand. That's where you want to be. That's the card you want to start off, but you have to imagine Colegrove has some stuff like Assassin's Trophy to potentially get rid of it, and we might have a real game if that happens.
Yeah, just a Gravecrawler on 1 for Colegrove, and here's Chalice on 1 for Hand, so has both of the deck's prison elements online.
Yeah, but no green mana here for Colegrove means that he has no real answer to the Leyline of the Void yet.
Another Chalice on 1 for hand.
Yeah, but it's going to be just a pass there. He doesn't have a third land to play, but neither does Colegrove, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's got a Satyr Wayfinder in hand, but no green mana to cast it. He's just passing here.
Now, next turn, what he can do is he can draw, move to discard, pitch Vengevine, and then the following turn just cast a couple 1-drops into the Chalice of the Void. But it looks like he's going to go for the Gusto here, use that Assassin's Trophy to knock off Leyline of the Void, and then have a really big following turn.
See hand missing his third land drop, and this really speaks to how rancid the gameplay is with Leyline of the Void.
Yeah, you have to mulligan into some really bad hands that have graveyard removal, and that's what I'm talking about when I say it's not really fair to pressure the rest of the format to have the answer to the Hogak deck. All Hogak decks have to do is have some number of Assassin's Trophies or Nature's Claims in their sideboard, and usually that's enough to take care of the Leyline eventually, because the opponents usually mulligan and have really weak draws featuring Leyline of the Void.
Colegrove fetched to 17 and passed on his turn. Hand finally finds a third land, deploys Thought-Knot Seer. In response, Colegrove will tag the Leyline of the Void with an Assassin's Trophy. Life total is currently hands 14 to Colegrove's 17.
Yeah, finally establishing some pressure. The Thought-Knot Seer also going to be taking a card from Colegrove. You have to imagine it's going to be one of the ones he can cast through Chalice of the Void.
See a fistful of 1s, a Satyr Wayfinder, and a Vengevine.
Yeah, Satyr Wayfinder, a pretty easy take there. And see, that's kind of why I was saying he should have maybe passed go. But the Thought-Knot Seer would have ruined that plan. But now, you know, he's got a handful of 1s that don't do anything in the face of Chalice of the Void. Even though he's able to deal with the Leyline, can't really do much of anything else because Chalice of the Void is also a banger against that deck.
No plays on Colegrove, this time no attacks with the Gravecrawler. We'll go back to hand. Redundant Urza's Mine and a Karn the Great Creator, so advancing himself towards a pretty quick game win here.
Yeah. He's thinking about going to get Tormod's Crypt as a safety valve just so things don't go awry this turn.
Crypt is the find. He'll cast that. Spot in the hand. He has a backup Karn as well.
Bloodghast is the find and the cast, but it doesn't do a whole lot in this scenario. You're seeing exactly the type of gameplay that the Hogak deck kind of, well, never mind. That's over. Whatever.
There's the Lattice combo for Dylan Hand.
It's going to make a point about how the games with Leyline of the Void are just not very fun. But, you know, Karn plus Mike's Lattice not that fun either, so who knows.
I'm not interested really in playing with or against either of these decks.
Well, me and you are cut from a similar cloth, Mr. Turf.
The Teamer Bros.
Teamer Bros. We like to draw cards and we like to kill creatures. And when our opponents don't have any creatures, we like to either counter their stuff or throw bolts at the face.
It's tough because you want to call the opposition to Hogak the heroes. But then Eldrazi-Tron's just this Chalice of the Void deck where the pressures in the format over years of efficient cards, the fact that games frequently end on the third and fourth turn of the game really forces you to play a lot of low mana cards. Specifically, a lot of decks are glutted on 1s.
Right.
Which just makes Chalice of the Void good against the decks that you're highly incentivized to play otherwise.
Yo. And I think that that's really what the Eldrazi-Tron decks have been feeding off of all weekend. You know, I talked to Cedric about what I was trying to write for my article this week, and I was like, well, I can write decks that are going to be good once Hogak gets banned. And he's like, well, why don't you write about decks that are currently good under Hogak's thumb? And I thought to myself, that's boring. Because all those decks are just linear, low to the ground, and lose the Chalice of the Void, you know? Decks that can ignore the raw power of Hogak and the consistency and the turn 3 kills and stuff, those are not going to be the decks that I want to play with or against in Modern anyway. Hogak really incentivizes the format to go in such a way that both players just start ignoring them because the Hogak deck is so resilient in the face of traditional interaction. It's only really going to be stifled by one of those really potent graveyard effects like Rest in Peace or Leyline of the Void. And then it just becomes a sub-game of whether or not they have the answer. And that's just not Magic. Not to me, anyway.
Prison definitely has its space in Magic, but the metagame's really pushed to where Prison is a higher metagame share than you would like to see.
Oh, I don't mind the Wurza decks and the Eldrazi-Tron decks being Prison and beating up on the Hogak decks. I'm talking more like the Infect decks of the format that could potentially prey on the Hogak decks for not having enough interaction, or maybe like the Hyper Storm decks featuring Lotus Field and Twiddle, you know? Like stuff like that just feels like, you know, the Hogak decks are pushing the format in the wrong direction, and it's just dangerous.
Players looking at their 7s for game number 3. Leyline check for Dylan Hand. See Colegrove on a mulligan.
Dylan Hand does have a number of anti-graveyard cards that are not necessarily Leyline of the Void, though. Could potentially keep a hand with Grafdigger's Cage. Could have a really fast Chalice of the Void hand that also has a card in the Great Crater into Tormod's Crypt on 4, or maybe 3 with a Mind Stone or something. But you have to imagine he wants to keep a hand with Leyline of the Void.
Right. See a spread of some graveyard stuff, some lands, and an Assassin's Trophy in the 6 for Colegrove. Looks very keepable to me.
Yeah, the trophy being the biggest part of it. Hand has no Leyline of the Void, but I believe I saw a Grafdigger's Cage peeking out over there. So he's going to have the piece of protection to keep him from getting run over by Vengevines early. But does he have anything to follow it up?
Colegrove fetches a 17 for a turn 1 Neonate, or is his mind Grafdigger's Cage for hand? Don't know that Colegrove has the second land.
And again, we're seeing incentives to play basically non-Magic in order to have answers to stuff like Grafdigger's Cage or Leyline of the Void.
Neonate knocks hand to 19. Citrus Supplier will be cast for Colegrove. A couple Hogaks hit in the bin, no second land.
Yeah, those can't be cast from the graveyard thanks to that Grafdigger's Cage, but if Colegrove has one in hand or was able to draw one at some point, he could cast it using the Delve mechanic, because Grafdigger's Cage doesn't slow that down at all.
Yeah, that is true. One more black and or green creature would get him there.
Now we found the Bloodstained Mire. That should be the green mana necessary to blow up the Grafdigger's Cage. And now what he can do is blow up the Grafdigger's Cage. It looks like he has a Shenanigans. Am I seeing that right?
Well, let's check this.
Yeah, he's got one copy of Shenanigans. I think he has a Shenanigans for the Grafdigger's Cage. He can blow that up and then cast one of the Hogaks out of the graveyard, delving everything except the Hogak itself.
Fetches the 14 for an Overgrown Tomb. Hand's last turn was just an Eldrazi Temple and no spells.
He's building up for something.
There's Satyr Wayfinder from Colegrove.
He's trying to disguise a little bit. He doesn't want to eat up all those good cards in the graveyard either.
Third Hogak Mill to pick up a Marsh Flats as the land. Attacks with his 2 1-power creatures, hand to 17.
Yeah, this is dangerous. I don't like this play because now Dylan Hand can potentially play a Thought-Knot Seer and strip your answer to Grafdigger's Cage, and then you're going to be left without a whole lot going on.
Redundant Urza's Mine, and there is Thought-Knot Seer.
Now, he might have 2 answers. He might have Shenanigans and Assassin's Trophy. And that looks like that is the case.
Yeah, Shenanigans, Trophy, Vengevine.
If I'm Hand, I'm probably going to take the Vengevine because he has 2 answers to the cage.
Is there an incentive to go for Shenanigans just because you exile it and it has Dredge?
There's some amount, but Hand... Mostly his graveyard hit is going to be Leyline of the Void. He has 1 Tormod's Crypt in the sideboard, the 1 cage in the sideboard that he's brought in. So I don't think that the recursive nature of Shenanigans is going to be too problematic in this game. He just needs to stifle the development from Colegrove just a little bit, and I think that involves taking the Vengevine.
Fair enough.
But I'm more than happy to be wrong here. He's still going to be facing down a Hogak next turn no matter what he does. But, you know, he might be facing down a Hogak and a Vengevine if he's not careful.
Hand thought it over. He does go for the Shenanigans. We'll go back over to Colegrove.
I mean, the Shenanigans does protect, or taking the Shenanigans does protect a future Chalice of the Void, should that be something that we lean toward. Here comes the Assassin's Trophy on the cage. That's going to unlock the Hogaks in the graveyard. If he drew a creature, he can actually crack the Neonate now, pitch the Vengevine, and then go creature from hands into cast Hogak from the graveyard, and that would potentially let him generate 12 power this turn.
Might even be worth it just to get that extra look for the creature if he doesn't have it.
Yep.
You see he's looking at sacrificing that Neonate, discards the Vengevine, draws.
It looked like a black card. Oh, and he's playing that Swamp Fast. Oh, he's playing that Swamp Fast. That has to be a black creature because otherwise he would have played the Marsh Flask and got something tapped. Getting back Bloodghast as well. Casting a Hogak.
And here comes the Gak, looking at what he wants to delve. There's some redundant Gaks, a bunch of cards that don't play in the graveyard as well, so pretty trivial to get that one on the table.
Yep, and that's cast one creature. Does he have a creature here to follow it up? That's a Carrion Feeder. Vengevine comes back. We're going to see an attack for 4 here with the Vengevine. And Dylan head in hand. Going to try to figure out how to navigate from this spot.
Vengevine offers a trade with Thought-Knot Seer.
I think his only real way out is to go land, all is dust, or Eldrazi Temple, all is dust in very short order.
He needs Eldrazi Temple, all is dust, and then still needs to sweat some things from there.
Yeah, for sure.
Thought-Knot Seer will trade with Vengevine. Colegrove draws off of the Seer. And we'll see what Dylan Hand can do about this. He is very behind on the battlefield now. You see 13 power on the table and a Carrion Feeder, which usually means there's some lurking additional power. We know about a Marsh Flats in Colegrove's hands. That's kind of 2 Bloodghasts.
Yeah, and if he wants to, Colegrove can sacrifice the Stitcher Supplier to the Carrion Feeder, looking for exactly Gravecrawler, and cast that twice to bring back the Vengevine, even if he has no creature. He can also just recast a Hogak from the graveyard to get 1 cast creature if he finds something else to play from hand or off the Stitcher Supplier. A lot of avenues to get that Vengevine back next turn, even though he doesn't have a creature to play right now.
Karn the Great Creator cast for hand.
Well, that's a start. If he doesn't die next turn, which I'm not, let's see, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, if the Vengevine comes back, the game's basically over. But he's going to go ahead and play the Karn the Great Creator, and he's looking to cast a Snaring Bridge next turn. But he basically has to empty his hand as well because Colegrove has access to a bunch of 1-power creatures, and he's attacking for a huge chunk of damage this turn.
Yeah, finds the Snaring Bridge, plays Blast Zone. I think he has like 5 cards in hand here. See if Colegrove can close it here. He'll start his turn by sacrificing the Citrus Supplier to the Feeder.
There's a Gravecrawler and another Vengevine. That should do it. So let's cast the Gravecrawler from the grave. We're going to sack it to the Carrion Feeder, cast it again, bring back both Vengevines, and that should be all she wrote.
Citrus Supplier, cast from hand, and Hand's going to pick him up.
Man.
Bobby Colegrove, 2-1 over Dylan Hand.
What a brutal way to go.